we want to do what I did with the president's father in the tsunami area. We want to be a place where people can know their money will be well spent, where we will ensure the ongoing integrity of the process. And we want to stay with this over the long run. My job with the UN basically is not at all in conflict with this because I'm sort of the outside guy. My job is to work with the donor nations, the international agencies, the business people around the world to try to get them to invest there, the non-governmental organizations, the Haitian diaspora community. I'm just grateful that President Bush wants to help, and I've already figured out how I can get him to do some things that he didn't sign on for.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash. One of the things that President will do is to make sure your money is spent wisely.
Grimerica.
It's estimated that somewhere between 10 and 14 billion was sent towards that effort. And Bill, and the former, I think it is Prime Minister or a former Prime Minister of Haiti, refuses to account for any of that money. And the people of Haiti, are rioting in the streets.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. We are going to be chatting with Charles Ortel a little bit later about the Clinton Foundation and the crookedness of it. But first, as always, the one and only Graham. Can I borrow your hair pills, Dunlop? How's it going, buddy?
That's not very nice.
I know.
Well, you have them too, so why don't you eat? Try them.
I keep forgetting to grab them.
I'll grab them. I'll try them for you.
Hopefully, Kyle
do a
has
little experiment.
We'll see. Oh yeah, you're running away too, eh? You're catching up to me
with the receiver.
Yeah.
The
receiver. That's the worst.
So I figured I'd give all listeners a little background and a good welcome to all our new listeners. Thanks for coming on board.
Skip ahead to the interview if you want.
Yeah, you can skip ahead to the interview. We usually do a little intro where we talk about listener feedback and synchronicities, and we share stories and stuff like that. We just ramble on somewhat lazily, but there's a timestamp in the show notes where the interview starts if you want to just jump right ahead to Charles Ortel. Pretty fascinating chat. It's like an hour and a half. He stays with us. It's pretty cool. All about charities and all that, and the corruption and the legalities of it all.
And just how illegal.
Yeah.
More like the illegalities.
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 So also we thought we'd mention, we had Corbett on, James Corbett, a little while ago. And we don't have any previous episodes, about the Clintons, but I'll put a link in the show notes for his. I think he's got a Meet the Clintons episode.
Yeah, it's like episode 100 and something.
Which probably fit right in.
It's pretty thorough,
Yeah, he does a great job.
And there's some documentaries. There's Clinton Cash. The Mina Connection is the one I watched.
Yeah, and we talk about the No Agenda show in here as well, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes.
All that good shit.
Yeah. Not that we want to advertise everybody else, but it's they're collaborators.
Yeah. And we don't mind spouting the best podcast in the universe from time to time.
Yeah. And we don't, just for all the new people as well, we don't have any ads here. No portals, no sponsorships. It's fully listener supported.
That's right. So head on, I'll get that out of the way right now. Head on over to grimerica.ch/support and help us keep trudging forward and help us continue to provide this sort of content without having to worry about advertisers or sponsors or anyone else. We can do whatever the fuck you guys want us to do.
Yeah, and the whole back catalog is free as well.
185 episodes.
What else was I going to say about that?
So head on over to grimerica.ch/support. Anything from $1 a month to $30 a month. You can sign up there for a monthly. The most popular is the $5.55 option. That's about $1 a show, which I don't think is too much to ask for.
No, not at all. I mean, we do have fixed expenses here, right? And they're more than we thought. I mean, we did try and do it professionally here, at least somewhat. Not necessarily our behavior, but our equipment anyways.
To that. Pretty profesh.
Yeah.
Or send a one-time donation. If you want a t-shirt, $25 or more. Text, email first. Email us your size first because we're running down on our stock and we're not reordering because we're switching everything over to Redbubble.
Yeah.
Which there is a link for. So if you want a t-shirt, get it through us for now if we have your size. And if you want anything else, like a Grimerica throw pillow, head over to grimerica.ca/swag.
And send a pic of your pillow fight?
Sure. Or you can I got you the notebook.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. It'll be in 2 weeks.
Right on. So, what do you want to hear about? We got some listener feedback, lots of emails and some stories.
Synchros?
Kind of mini synchro, yeah. But actually, speaking of our professionalism and our Bob and Doug like style, let's play some feedback in a mini synchro and mini.
Mini synchro?
Literally a mini synchro in Minneapolis.
I'm a rambling gram with synchronicities all over the web. And Ervin is skeptical about everyone and don't believe it yet.
All right. This is from Mark and Minnie.
Mark and Minnie. Hey, yeah. Mark and Minnie.
He says, Graham and Darren, I have to say...
Is that like Mort and Mindy?
Yeah, kind of. I have to say the Grimerica show is the best conspiracy show out there. Well, let me first say, today's episode isn't a conspiracy, or it's not about conspiracies, that's for sure.
Facts.
Yeah, but we do like to touch on them. So he says, don't get me wrong, there are others out there that are great, but your program is a breath of fresh air in a world that seems to be going to hell in a handbasket. You consistently find interesting guests and present topics that might not get airplay elsewhere. Perhaps others have said this before, but I consider you two the Bob and Doug McKenzie of the Great White North conspiracy realm.
Bob and Doug McKenzie, nonstop.
Whenever I refresh my podcast player, I anxiously wait to see if another show has been posted so I can laugh my ass off during your pre-interview banter. Keep up the great work and know that a donation is heading your way very soon. As for my synchros, I've been having a lot lately, but I have not been jotting them all down. With that being said, here are two. You paying attention there, buddy?
Yeah.
Before typing up this email this evening, I looked down at the two laundry baskets full of clothes that needed to be folded, and I said to my wife, once again, the never-ending story, more clothes to fold. My wife responded, well, today is the 37th anniversary of the never-ending story. Sure enough, just throw out some cliche and it comes back to haunt you with a Google Doodle and a headline honoring the anniversary of a famous fantasy novel. My second synchro took place a couple days after the impressive Cliff High interview. Actually, you know what I'll do? I'm going to put that in the show notes as well. I downloaded the episode so I could ride around town in my van with my dog Hatchet to run some errands. We stopped at a local coffee shop to pick up a decaf before continuing on when I noticed a disheveled woman wearing a winter hat. A toque in Canada, perhaps.
Yes.
Sitting at one of the patio
Isn't
tables.
Isn't toque everywhere?
No, it's just it's the Bob and Duck thing, too. I won't do it. I sat at a nearby table as the woman continued with her quirky behavior. Actually, no, I missed the spot here. Sorry.
Yes, sir.
She was sitting at one of the patio tables at the entrance of the shop. As I walked in, she mumbled something, seemingly directed at me, and continued to fiddle around with two disposable insulated cups. I went inside, made my purchase, and proceeded back outside with my dog. I sat at a nearby table as the woman continued with her quirky behavior. I watched as she took out two large tea bags and placed one in each of the cups as if to offer an invisible friend a drink. She put a lid on one, took a sip, and set it on her table. She then stood up, grabbed the second full cup of tea, and for no apparent reason, chucked it on the ground near a tree. Just as she did so, a produce truck drove by with a logo splashed across the entire side panel that read, Crazy Fresh. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. She then collected her things from the table, left her trash on the ground, and walked down the street in her own whacked-out merry way. Perhaps not the best synchro, but crazy things similar to the ones I've related to have been happening over and over again. Just thought I'd share in the synchro fun. Keep up the shows. And he's got the logo here is
Crazy fresh.
the kind eating a crazy fresh apple.
I sure that's not a trip report.
It could be a trip
Sounds
report.
like a trip report.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It does, actually. It's got that ring.
But yeah, whoa.
My sister's had a shitload of synchros happening to her as well. And she's going to write them down for me because there's about 5 in a row.
Good day. Good day. Good day.
I call it her.
Good day. How's it going? I'm Bob McKenzie. It's my brother Doug.
How's it going? Hey,
We got
Okay,
two
that's
topics.
I never watched it.
Really? Yeah, you don't know then. That's pretty funny.
I should watch some.
Just watch the movie, at least.
There's a movie?
Yeah.
Thought it was like a sitcom or
Well, yeah,
wasn't
it was, but then it
SCTV?
became
Was it
yeah,
SCTV?
but then it
skit?
became a movie, right? Strange Brew.
Huh.
You'd like the
When did this all happen?
before you were born, maybe. I don't know. It was in the 80s, I think.
Huh.
So, anyways, there you have it.
We'll watch that. We'll watch that and Monty Python back to back.
Yeah, we should.
Just be a barrel of laughs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I watch the old movies though, and I'm just
I wonder, how did I like that?
Yeah,
movie? No,
yeah.
Monty Python's totally different. You'll never
Yeah.
feel that way.
okay. So what's next?
Well, I got, you're not going to rate those synchros? Those trip report synchros?
7.
Okay. Well, I got an interesting email.
I'm sure he was fucked up on mushrooms or something. It's too perfect,
Yeah,
too poetic.
yeah.
I've had that. I feel like deja vu almost when he was telling about the tea splash and stuff like that.
Huh. And maybe it was really shroom tea.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wanted to throw this out here because I've had it for a while and I want to bring it up with listeners in case they want to contribute to this. But this is from Julian. And he says, "Hey, hope you are well. Please forgive if this email is a bit swiffy, but I'm completely baked. I wonder if you might put a shout out for listeners to contact the show and recommend movies or books that they recommend pertaining to spiritual awakening. If you're interested in this idea, I will go first and recommend The Fountain, The Silent Flute, ASA Circle of Iron, and also The Way of the Peaceful Warrior."
Or we should just get a list going someplace of like the best docs.
That's what we're doing.
Well, no, we're talking about doing it.
No, because you have to
But then we
get
could have it on the website
feedback
section.
from the listeners, though. Like,
I just watched What the Bleep Do We Know?
oh,
Yeah, do you know-
that is one. That's one of
Do you
them
know
right
there's
there.
3 of them? 3 of them now? There's 2 What the Bleep Do We Know, and there's like a unofficial 3rd one.
Yeah, I had the box set before. If that has all 3, I
3,
know that had
the
2
trilogy.
or 3. I think, yeah, it had 2 or 3 in there.
There's also...
So, did you just watch that recently?
Yeah.
What'd you think? What?
I fell asleep.
Oh,
I don't
you're
watch a lot of
smoking the wrong
TV.
type. You're smoking the wrong strain.
I don't watch a lot of TV, so now when I do, it's
It's
usually in the background or as soon as I like, you know?
Yeah.
As soon as I put the laptop away or whatever, and then
Yeah, that was a good one though. I thought some of those people in there I want to have on the show still.
yeah. And so, well, one of the best documentaries I've seen in the last while was I Am.
Okay, that's another one. Yeah.
And then there's the Zeitgeist trilogy. I could just go on and on and on, really.
Is that a spiritual awakening, the Zeitgeist, though? Or is it more of a
What's an awakening?
Matrix fucking awakening?
Awakening's an awakening.
No, it isn't.
Sure it is. You ain't going to wake up from the one if you don't wake up from the other.
There is an overlap. I give you that for sure. So I was thinking there was one back there from Neil Donald Walsh, I think, but it was a movie made out of his book Conversations with God that was pretty cool. Not in a religious way, but more in a spiritual way. And I would have to add the book The Four Agreements from my list. It's from
Portal.
Mikhail Don Ruiz, and it's like this just simple read, but it's so profound.
You know, we have an interview at 5 a.m. on Friday.
Yep. And then the other thing, what else was I going to? Oh, A New Earth from Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle is pretty
I got to prepare for that.
pretty profound. So that's my list added to it for now.
Sure. Send
So
your
if
shit
any
in.
listeners have one, yeah, let's
Now we
a
need
good
a
idea.
jingle.
He says, love the show.
And now another edition of the Grimerica Goodies by the people.
I can't speed him up.
Love the show, guys. And you guys make a great comedy act that transcends the show beyond mere paranormal podcasts.
You make me laugh, too.
Thanks, buddy.
You're a meme.
I got my new meme generator. Check it out on Instagram.
Yeah, I will. Absolutely.
I was just looking at some Sasquatch pics I'm going to put together, and not like real Sasquatch, but
Huscular is now a t-shirt.
I'll have to hashtag that on my new
There you go. Meme generator.
my new Instagram post that I'll do
Oh,
with
there you go.
Sasquatch. Sasquatch is pretty huscular too.
there you go. You should get yourself a Huscular shirt. Rock that shit.
Maybe, yeah, well.
Yeah.
You got to change the font color though, because it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
You need a darker font so it goes on most colors. The yellow font just blends right in.
Star-
As you would know, since you ordered one with the wrong font color and you can't even read
It
it.
was Star Warsy. Yeah, I'll get, I'll talk to Nap. Nap designed it for you.
Oh, yeah?
Same with the Grimerican one.
So, do you want a UFO quote right now, or do you want to learn how to lucid dream?
Is it real or a dream? What does that even mean?
So sometimes it seems like listeners resonate with the lucid dreaming aspect, and I've been trying the lucidamine, right? Which is that
You've been trying to lucid
galantamine.
dream for as long as I've known you.
I'm not doing a very good job, but
Still.
I had a pretty.
Whatever happened with the glasses? Ones that
The Remy's, they're
you were
called,
waiting
actually.
for them to come in. You had pre-ordered them. And
No, I didn't order them
flashed
actually.
Oh.
No. But that's not a bad idea. I'd like to try that. That would be a glass that shines the red light.
Mhm.
And so you just notice the light when you're dreaming, but it doesn't wake you up. So I've been going back and forth with some listeners because they've been giving me suggestions, and we go back and forth. And
Still nothing.
well, not really. No, I have better dreams now, and they're more. Well, no, I shouldn't even say that. Sometimes they're more consistent, probably.
I think I had moments of lucidity in the last while.
Hmm.
It's always because lately those fucking kittens are always running around like
That's
fucking
perfect. So it
maniacs.
wakes you up, and you go back to
So I
bed. You do
get
the
up in the
wake
mo-
back to bed.
It's always in the morning, so it has to be on the weekend because during the week I'm just in a different state of mind. I'm in a different place when I get up to wake up those cats, and I'm worried about
Right.
my interruption, and I have to get to work in the morning, and how I need to get to sleep, and I need my sleep, and I'm not in the fucking state of mind.
No.
But then
this
on
is
the
interesting.
weekend, when I get up, I don't really care. I round up the cats, take them downstairs. And what's funny is sometimes I'll even, if it's like 5 a.m. or 4 a.m., sometimes I'll have trouble getting back to sleep. I'll just go outside, I'll have a little toot, I'll go back in, go to sleep, I'll fall asleep. And that's when I'll start having moments of where I'm someplace and I'll know in the dream where I'm like, this is a dream. I'm dreaming.
Wow. And then what do you do?
Nothing. I
Wow.
I wake up.
Fly.
I either wake up or I don't know. I've never had a moment where I'm able to do anything. Or
That's the first step is awareness.
yeah. So have I pulled ahead of you?
Probably. No, I do have, honestly, I was emailing Matt back and forth, and I was saying that I don't practice I don't practice recording my dream well enough, and then practicing being in reality all day long. Like, am I in a dream? Am I in a reality? To train yourself for becoming aware during the dream.
You're never going to catch me doing that. I remember when you were doing that. It's annoying. Don't do that.
Okay.
When you're like flicking off light switches all the time and stuff. I'm checking if I'm dreaming.
You remember me doing that in the office?
I remember you doing it.
Yeah.
Had to just pinch yourself?
Yeah, it doesn't matter what you do as long as you're trying to be aware. Like, am I dreaming? Right?
Sometimes I've pinched myself. Set to see.
Yeah. So Matt responded with some good advice.
Let's hear it.
He says, "Okay, the only supplement type I may take is called Relax and Sleep from the dollar store, which has chamomile and valerian, but I usually don't. Now, actually, the valerian root is in tea a lot as well. That's in the, like last night I had this lucid dreaming tea and it sort of helped. I had some pretty cool dreams, but I didn't really become aware in them.
Just along for the ride.
So he says, have you found an effective dosage for lucidamine yet? So here's how I use it. First, number one, to scrap your lucid dreaming protocols. Sounds backwards, but in using lucidamine, I've realized I'm only training normal waking skills and not advancing my LD skills. What seems to work best is to find a trigger for the subconscious, like having a 1-minute conversation about it with someone. Basically, set it and forget it early in the day. Too much dwelling on it weighs you down. 2, eat a small light snack before bed and place a glass of water and your dose on the bedside table. Allow yourself an initial 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Number 4, set an alarm to wake you up. My ideal schedule is I go to bed around 11:30 and awake by 4:30. It's kind of what you're talking about. You want to have a good 2 to 3 hours for sleeping after this alarm, which then leads it to weekends, because otherwise you would be getting up for work. Well, you might not be, but I would be.
Hey, you've been there as long as I have.
Number 5, when you wake up, I prefer to take a quick piss. You prefer to go out and have a quick hoot.
I have a piss too. You know what? When I get up in the middle of the night for a piss, I always sit down.
Really?
Yeah.
I never do.
Because I don't want to turn the light on. And I can't just go and shooting blind. My wife will fucking shoot me. So it's just easier. I'd rather just sit down than deal with the lights. Because then you're always like squinting and...
Yeah. I got pretty good aim in the dark.
And the lights fuck you up too. It's better just go sit in there.
I got aim in the dark.
Do your business. Bring the black light into your bathroom.
So he says...
no, I'm not bringing a black light anywhere near your house.
So he says, when you wake up and after you take a piss, take your dose along with your drink of water and immediately go back to sleep.
Another dose? So this is your second dose?
No, you don't. No, you just leave the one by the bedside table, right? This is, you leave it there for this, so you don't have to go downstairs and get it.
Just make sure we don't need people overdosing on lucidamine.
It is crucial to not think about what you're doing. Just take the approach that you're getting up to take an aspirin or something like that. I made my mistake my first couple of times about being too excited and started thinking about stuff, and it really screwed me up. I had a very unrestful half sleep filled with an unfiltered stream of thoughts and dream fragments all mixed up. I did not find this a pleasant experience. Also, it seems the lucidamine starts taking effect within 5 or 10 minutes, so if you're not back to sleep, chances are you're fucked.
That's like being on some weird antidepressant. I remember we were in high school, we fucking sniffed some antidepressants, buddy stole them from his old man. I don't know what we were thinking. But it was not a fucking good experience.
Really?
No, it was the worst.
Why?
I remember we're all just like lying around in his basement, just talking about how terrible of a decision we had made. Yeah. It took me like a day and a half to feel normal.
Really? Well, what did you feel like? I don't get it.
I don't know, just like out of touch.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember what kind it was? Like Percocet or something like that? Or?
It wasn't Percocet.
No, is that even an anti? I don't even know what that is.
Percocet candy.
What's the other one I'm thinking of? It was probably that if it was back in the
Prozac.
90s. Yeah.
Could have been something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it would have been back in like early 90s. Right around the time Bill Clinton was president.
See, this is how, there's so many ODs in America because there's so much prescription pills and such a stigma about taking drugs that people end up doing that.
That's right.
I mean, we used to sniff Pam when we were young. All the girls in school and
Pam?
People experiment, yeah.
Like the fucking spray on.
Yeah. in a bag.
I remember smoking oregano.
Your feet would go wet.
Or tea. Someone said you could smoke tea. Emptied out tea bags.
Really?
Not even herbal tea. I remember doing that. Yeah. The good old days.
Wow.
And sniffing Tylenol 3s and shit.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I didn't go through a sniffing phase. Well, besides Pam. But we do our own
later cocaine.
Yeah, later. So we did our own, like, you call it when you deep breathe and hyperventilate and choke yourself.
Choke yourself out. Yeah, I remember doing that too.
And I think we got in trouble once. The teachers found out we were doing it because somebody fucking fell and passed out and they didn't get up right away. And then everybody got all scared.
That was Scoob for us. That was Scoob. I remember we got caught. We were doing it underneath the tables in the back of the math class, choking ourselves with our hoodies.
Oh my god, we were doing it outside the portables.
You get that feeling, you get all dizzy, or you could do the other one where they'd push you up against the wall, push your chest.
Yeah,
that's probably even worse.
All right. So, anyways, let's get back to the story here. If people are still with us,
if they can pick their jaws up.
So he says you got to get back to sleep quick. So he says, when falling back to sleep, it is best to lay on your back, hands at your side, slow breathing and being still. You should only try once a week, or I think you're basically wasting it. Although I've taken it during the day for a mental boost. Remember, galantamine, that's the main ingredient in lucidamine, was for Alzheimer's patients for mental cognition. If your LD session fails, just have patience for the next 6 days. It also stays in your system for about 3 days, so you may accidentally have an LD or definitely vivids. My effective dosage is 2 capsules. I've tried just 1 and even 1.5, but never got close except for some vivids. I'm 6'4" and 225, but I'm not sure if that plays a part in tolerance.
Of course it does. He's a fucking linebacker.
Yeah, but but it's not a body thing. It's not a painkiller or whatever. It's a mental thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do you want to try it? We'll trade hair pills for lucidamine. I'll trade you.
I don't know if I want to get into that shit. Sounds like trouble.
Oh boy. So he says, overall, just try to do those steps on autopilot. As I say, it works beautifully 80% of the time. I kind of look at lucidamine and LD practices like DMT is to meditation. It's a shortcut to getting familiar with a certain state of being. I took a lot of experimenting, but I think it's worth it. He said it took a lot.
It's worth it? Maybe I should try it.
Feel free to ask me any questions you might have, or if you want to give me a call sometime, it's cool. That's from Matt. Thanks, Matt. And another listener called in, and I asked him for some advice too, because he was experimenting with it.
Maybe I'll give it a whirl. Dosing up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Having a lucid dream. Ooh.
But save it for the weekend.
Yeah, I don't know. Smoking DMT sounds funner.
Well, I'm looking forward to a trip report from you.
Yeah, one day. First, I gotta dig it out of the toolbox.
I was chatting with some friends that recommended not doing that. That you should just do the ayahuasca route with a shaman instead, if you want that.
Not my style.
Yep.
Not this Indian. Pow. Anything else? We got time for one more, maybe, if you got something decent.
No, I got some quotes here.
Some quotes?
Yeah.
Some,
Down and Graham, going deep.
I wanted to play the original one. Where is it?
Profound UFO quote of the week.
That's you.
All right, I got 2.
No.
Yeah.
I played 2 jingles, so I guess it's appropriate.
Oh, there we go. So this one's appropriate to this episode with Charles Ortel and the Clinton Foundation. So here it is. The UFO quote. He says, I think it's time to open the books on questions that have remained in the dark, on the question of government investigations of UFOs. It's time to find out what the truth really is out there. We ought to do it because it's right. We ought to do it because the American people can frankly handle the truth. And we ought to do it because it's the law. That was John Podesta, Bill Clinton, White House Chief of Staff, at a news conference October 22nd, 2004.
I thought Clinton said that.
No, there's other ones from Clinton as well. Other quotes from Clinton.
That's one.
Yeah. And I got another one here from Wilbert Smith. Good old Canadian. Senior radio engineer, head of Project Magnet, Department of Transportation. The matter is the most highly classified subject in the United States government, rated even higher than the H-bomb. Flying saucers exist. Their modus operandi is unknown, but concentrated effort is being made by a small group headed by Dr. Vannevar Bush. The entire matter is considered the United States authorities to be of tremendous significance. That's from Smith Wilbert, Memorandum on Geomagnetics, November 21st, 1950.
There you have it.
Good one, eh?
It's a good
I love those old ones from the 50s. All these serious guys doing serious memos, and now nobody believes none of it.
None of it.
And even Hillary Clinton talking about how it's been re-identified as, or reclassified as, what is it? Unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP instead of UFO.
She's on it.
Maybe, you know what? Maybe this whole thing's going to blow up, and her out card is disclosure, full-on disclosure. That's the only way she can get out of this.
And
she's in a mire. Him and Bill.
She's a man.
Her and Bill are going to just pull the disclosure card. UFOs are real. The media will blow up. Yeah. Everything will blow up.
UFOs are real. And then we're ripping you off. We're out of here.
Nobody cares about the Clinton Foundation anymore because full disclosure has happened. They'll be like, look, the rest of the countries around the world are accepting this. The U.S. government and the media is keeping it hidden. Boom.
Boom. Shakalaka.
And then she gets elected. That's her trump card.
You think?
Yeah. Or Putin will push it anyways. Either way.
It ain't happening, man.
I know. I'm just being wishful.
It ain't happening.
I do want that.
We could do the show for 20 years, and I'd predict.
No disclosure. It'll just be a leaky disclosure over the years.
Faucet.
And eventually in 20 years, everybody will just realize that it's a reality.
No. And the internet will be shut down when the power goes out.
We have a Carrington event.
We go into the fucking John Michael Greer future. Nobody will remember. A couple generations, no one will remember.
The safest places will be Africa and South America.
That's right. We're going to head there?
Sure. I'll choose South America.
You'll choose it? We're going to go to separate ones?
Well, I'm not going to go back to... I've been to Africa before, so go to somewhere I've never been.
Fucking Jackson drove to South America.
Yeah, that's crazy, eh?
Yeah. He's been sending me some quotes again.
It's weird when you look at it on the map. It's closer than you think from Florida. I mean, from Mexico.
Which is not that close to here. So it's close. South America is closer than you think to the southernmost part of North America.
Exactly.
Yeah. Once you get to the middle, they're really pretty close together. Yeah. Can't drive to Africa.
Belize is right there.
Right there. It's like
not Central America, but
right there.
No.
Right there.
It is.
Yeah. It's crazy.
It's right attached to Mexico.
How long of a drive do you think it is from here to Belize?
72 hours.
That's insane. I'm going to say it's 44. No, 52. Going with 52. Oh, they don't even tell you. Like, you're not fucking driving, you idiot. What's the city in Belize?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's because Belize is a continent.
It's definitely not a continent.
I'm just kidding.
61 hours.
Oh, it's just Hawaii that's a continent, right?
61 hours.
Ooh, that was close. Right in between both of us.
Yeah.
That's pretty weird. 51 and 72, and it's 61.
So I was closer.
Damn it.
Huh. And you're still not even out of North America.
Yes, you are. Belize is in Central America, probably.
Central America is not a continent.
How does that work? I didn't say it was a continent, but it's not part of South America.
No, it's part of North America.
Central America?
I don't know.
I don't think it is.
It's not part of North
But yeah, that's a good point, though. What continent does it belong in? I don't know. We're starting to ramble on here.
I'm going to say it starts at like Colombia, South America, which is after Panama. And after Costa Rica, which is somehow...
Dude, we could get down there pretty quick. How many, 60 hours? That's nothing. That's like 3 days. Yeah. That's less than 3 days. Just straight driving.
Yeah. Night rider. Till we get fucking shot in Mexico. Sorry, Red, but it's a possibility. Anything else? That's it.
That's it, buddy.
Fucking wind her down. Jump into this chat with Charles Ortel.
Tonight we have in Grimerica Charles Ortel. This is going to be about the Clinton Foundation. It's very interesting. So there's over 1 million tax-exempt organizations in the States. And obviously the Clinton Foundation is one of the most popular. Charles Ortel's been investigating the legality of the foundation and its web of donors and charities, what he's calling the Clinton Charity Network. And this is way bigger than the Clintons. And it's not about the right or the left. Charles has uncovered many discrepancies with the way this foundation is set up and what's been happening to all the money.
You there?
Yep, we can still hear you. Charles is an investor. Can you hear us?
You cut out. You cut out for a second. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Now, Charles is an investor and a writer interested in geopolitics, history, and economics. And he's been putting this research online for free for all to see. So thanks for coming on, Charles. It's great. It's good timing as well. You've published your executive summary there, and this thing could blow up. It's really really interesting how big this is getting.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for reaching out to me. It's an honor to be on your show, and I look forward to trying to answer any questions you may have.
Right on. Well, Darren, where do you want to start with this?
This is probably fairly uncharted territory for I want to say probably at least half of our audience. We are fairly global, with about 65% being in the U.S. But even them, like I know me personally, up until the last year or two when I really started getting to know Agenda and listening to Stefan Molyneux and things like that is when I really started to have my doubts, because growing up, I always thought, the Clintons were just a cut above, they seemed like they were always doing the right thing. I always thought Bill was okay. He got some woman trouble there, but other than that, they seemed like they were okay people. So maybe you could just give us a rundown of exactly what the Clinton Foundation is supposed to be and how you got involved and what you've discovered it turning out to be.
Sure. I'll give you a little bit of background. So I'm not, although, I appreciate the political ramifications here, I'm not involved in partisan politics. I was a registered Republican, but I didn't vote for John McCain in 2008. I couldn't vote for Obama. I grudgingly voted for Mitt Romney. But I'm not, I'm 60 years old. I'm not somebody who is a partisan Republican or a partisan Democrat. I don't think political parties do much for anything. So the second piece of the puzzle is that I was able to retire when I was 46 years old. And ever since then, after getting my kids off to school and college, I've had the fortune to do what I wanted to do. And I was able to look at lots of different things that I hadn't studied too much in college and business school in life. And around 2006-07 timeframe, really by accident, I was trying to figure out if I thought the market was valued fairly or not. Was a crash coming? And I hit on GE by accident and determined that GE was not what everybody thought it was. And I also determined that a crash was imminent and it wouldn't be solved by the traditional approaches of lowering interest rates and deficit spending that obviously still haven't worked. So that's what got me at first some media attention. It's funny, I was on a track where I was thinking even of maybe going off to Oxford or Cambridge and getting a PhD in history.
Wow.
When this happened, and I said to my kids, listen, if I not having worked for 5 years, if I go to my friends around the world, and I have many because of what I used to do in banking and investing, people are either going to look at me and say, you're never going to work again because you're wrong for picking on GE and all this, or you're going to be in the media. And so I was proven right. I got into the media, did a lot of stuff, commenting first about GE, then the crisis, then politics with Obama, and I have a training in international business and politics, as a student. So I got to talk a lot about the turmoil all over the world for a lot. I've been on Canadian television a lot, both CNN and then later Sun News for a while, and radio up there. So what I like are problems that people can't seem to solve. My dad is very much alive, almost 90, nuclear physicist. I grew up in an environment. My mother's passed away. She was an expert on Johann Sebastian Bach. And I grew up in an environment where, problem solving and trying to solve problems nobody else could solve is sort of the way I was brought up. So somebody idly mentioned a couple of years back that, this Clinton Foundation sounded good, but nobody could actually figure out really what it was. And so that just really piqued my interest. And although I'm currently on one small charity board, and I had been on a slightly larger charity board, I had never really assumed that as a trustee, you could get in trouble working on a charity. I figured with a bank you can get in trouble, a corporation you can get in trouble, but how could you get in trouble as a trustee? And what are the forms that you actually have to file as a trustee? So to my shock, actually, and surprise, the regulatory process for charities is quite interesting. And it's very different than the corporate world in which I've spent so much of my time. The rules for charities in former colonies of Great Britain, like Canada and like the U.S., are based on ancient law. It's really Roman law that was codified in England in a statute in 1601 that explained how charities are supposed to work. And so there's some bedrock principles. The first is that you may not operate a charity to create private gain of any type, any substantial private gain. And that's not just monetary gain. You can't operate a charity to create an advantage for yourself, an edge for yourself. And all of this is very straightforward. It's laid out in the English statute. We adopted. There's a lot of stuff written about this. That's one of the first principles. The second principle is that we couldn't, I don't know what you guys like to do for fun, but, the statutes are clear. Some things are charities and other things are not. So you get, if you want to set up a charity, and this Clinton Foundation was set up to be a presidential archive. Now, there's a specific statute down here in the U.S. That defines what a presidential archive is, and it's supposed to be a place where the books, records, and other memorabilia that were created during the time of the presidency of the specific president are housed. Those are the property in the main of the U.S. government, we the people, and they go into a building, and the building and facility and grounds are supposed to be used to study that period. It's not to study whatever a president decides is important when he wakes up in the morning. It's to study the past of that president. Mm-hmm. And that's what's set up to be in Little Rock. Now, the Canadian tradition is slightly different, and I'm being very simplistic here, and forgive me, those of you in Canada who are listening, but The Canadian statute is more, it grows out of a slightly different tradition. And you see this in other countries where the government up in Canada, sort of frowned on these type of charities, international charities in particular. And the rules are different. They're similar in the sense that if you set up a charity in Canada, you got to define a purpose and stick to it. You can't raise money. You can't say your charity is going to do a building for an archive if you had such a system in Calgary or anywhere else. Raise money for that and then spend it on skiing, or spend it on even helping homeless people in Toronto. You're not allowed to do that. You got to pick a purpose, raise money for that purpose, and accomplish that purpose. It's that simple. So that's one thing. The next thing is that down here we have a large number of charities. We have about over 1 million charities.
That's
and the
crazy.
IRS is small. Yeah, the IRS is small. It can't possibly regulate all these charities. So what they do is they have a system where they say, to regulate these charities, you have to get, first of all, independent trustees. So a founder, Bill Clinton, and his family have to put in place a board that can stand up to the founder. They can say, no, Bill, we're not going to do that. That's not consistent with the purpose that we were authorized for. And those trustees they owe 3 duties. A duty of care, that is, they have to understand the laws that apply to them and to the charity. A duty of obedience, they have to follow all the laws. A charity cannot commit in our country any illegal act, not one. And that includes, not filing forms on time or filing them complete. You can't do that. You stand in the shoes of government. And then you have a duty of loyalty. And that loyalty means that if you have a conflict of interest, if you own a business, would be harmed by the action of the charity, you have to, A, declare to your fellow trustees that this conflict, and B, you can't vote. You can't get involved in a conflict of interest. So these are 3 duties that have never been discharged properly by the Clinton Foundation. It's always been an inside board. It's never done the right thing, frankly, in following its original authorized mission. But most importantly, the IRS, unlike for individuals, does not trust charities of a very small size, like 500,000 of revenue U.S. or more. You have to get an audit. You have to get a full-scale financial audit, not some friend to slap together a piece of paper. There are rules. We have really, really strict rules down here about what is an audit and what isn't an audit. This Clinton Foundation has never gotten an audit, a legally compliant audit for any year or for any part of it since October 23rd, 1997. Never, ever, ever.
How often are you supposed to get audits?
Once a year.
Oh, wow.
So they're only like 20 behind.
Yeah. Well, and then it gets really interesting. So down here, and really in various countries, I'll tell you about your law, which is interesting too. Down here we have, and the Canadian law that is, we have a rule that, if we want to set up, Americans want to set up a charity, you're not necessarily, or you may not probably get a tax deduction if Americans donate to a foreign charity. The way you have to do it is you have to set up typically, and there are some exceptions, but the way you have to set it up normally is what's called a Friends of organization. You set up a charity here. It's regulated according to our laws. It's controlled by our IRS. The rules apply to it. And then that charity turns around and donates to something in Canada or somewhere else. Now, there are over 200 countries, so there are a lot of variations on it, but that's the basic principle. So Bill Clinton and his people decided to get involved operating internationally as early as 2001, but they weren't authorized to do that. The record is clear. This isn't a mystery like the emails and all this kind of stuff with it. It's not. I mean, you have the charities, public charities that are like the Clinton Foundation. That while we're doing this podcast, the Clinton Foundation is raising money on the internet, maybe on telephones, mail, this and that. The charity that's in the public domain raising money using the internet, using the mails, using telephones, it has to make sure that its filings are true and accurate, and not that they don't omit any important material fact and they don't mislead. You have to do that. You're not allowed in our country and in your country to raise money when the filings are false and materially misleading. And so basically, there's a long record here. There's a lot of public information. There's a lot of information in the public domain. And the Clinton Foundation became involved soliciting money from your government, from Canadian government, from Canadian people as early as 2002, maybe earlier than that. Not having registered properly, not having had its forms properly done, not having had its audits. And they then hooked up with a gentleman named Frank Giustra, who is reasonably controversial around the world, styles himself as a philanthropist. But when you look closely at the records of what he has done in Canada and what the Clinton Foundation has done to get with him around the world, none of it's cricket. None of it's organized properly, either under Canadian law or under American law or under the other 7 countries, I think, in 6 or 7 countries where it operates.
And it's not even it's not even like they're taking our tax dollars and, investing them in helping people. They're, it's building their mansion in D.C.
That's what pisses me off so much is like what you say, Charles, it's Robin Hood in reverse, right? They're really taking from the poor. It's not like a bunch of international, companies and they're swapping money around. It's from the bottom up, really.
Yeah, I mean, I call them merchants around misery. I mean, what their business model here is, there's always going to be, sadly, a natural disaster, right? We're not going to, I don't think, no matter, as I say, my father's a very smart scientist. I believe scientists are, in the main, quite smart. We're not going to figure out a way to eliminate volcanoes and forest fires and floods and hurricanes. It's not going to happen. So there's going to be a slew of natural disasters. And one of the great things about your country, our country, other countries where the people are wealthier, and frankly, some poor countries, when disaster strikes, a lot more money will flow towards a group that says they're going to help the downtrodden than can possibly be deployed effectively. And fraudsters understand this. And so they have been doing this for a long, long time. We used to have a charity down here that was hysterically, in some ways it was hysterically funny. And it was, I believe, either around the time Bill and Hillary were in the White House without their own home, where this fraud artists or set of fraud artists in New York would basically sell the right for you to put up a card table, which you're not allowed to do that in New York, but they'd sell the right to some schmuck who would then either buy or have a large glass bottle and sit there all day by a table and say, this is money for the homeless. Well, none of that money went to the homeless. A portion went to the fraudsters who were setting up these card tables, and a portion went to the people sitting there, but nothing went to the homeless. And that that was a pretty large fraud. I mean, it wasn't billions, but it was, let's call it hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. A charity, as I write in the thing that's up on Zero Hedge, a charity is, in quotes, a perfect fraud, a vehicle for fraud, in quotes, right? Because who would believe that a former president of the United States and others around him would be committing fraud? You're just not going to go there, generally speaking. So when the people understand that no one's really going to check it, no one's going to ask, hey, why wasn't there an audit? No government's going to have the temerity outside the U.S. to say, we're looking through the papers here, and, I see that Bill Clinton is, we don't understand how this charity is, valid in your country, and then, so then they get a tough lawyer to say to the people up in Canada or, wherever it is, France or England, you just don't understand our laws. Of course, the former president, of course they're right. And so people back down. And then if you don't have an independent set of trustees and you don't have an audit, the first step in the fraud is the most devilish. A lot of money, for example, went towards an affiliated operation, the Haiti relief thing in 2010 forward. It's estimated that somewhere between 10 and 14 billion was sent towards that effort by people in Canada, by, I believe, your government, by many governments, by our government. And Bill and the former, I think it is prime minister or a former prime minister of Haiti, refuses to account for any of that money. And the people of Haiti, are rioting in the streets.
What do they say?
And they're rioting. Well, they're furious. I mean, I've never been to Haiti, but
no, Bill and
the prime minister of Haiti.
Yeah, like when they're pressed on it, what do they just say? I don't know, or
they basically say we won't. I don't. This is a podcast, and perhaps young children will listen to it, so I don't want to tell you what they probably say. I mean, they just tell them to go pound sand, And I mean, it's not just the people of Haiti. I mean, the Senate of Haiti. I mean, the government, other than the leadership, this is the former Prime Minister of Haiti and the former President of the United States, have this thing, the Interim Haiti Relief Commission or Recovery Commission or whatever, and they refuse to account for the money. And to put that in perspective, $14 billion, if we use that number, is 40% more than all the income that the Haitians earn of the whole 10 million Haitians, right? So you put it in a Canadian context or American context, our income, let's call it 9 trillion. That would be like, giving, or 10 trillion, it'd be like giving $14 trillion 1 year to this country. You would expect to see maybe something might have happened.
A difference.
That money,
like gold roads,
maybe
or new bombs.
Yeah. No, something. I mean, you got to get something for it. And instead, what happens? The Peter Schweitzer has that movie Clinton Cash, and he writes about the fact, and others have written about the fact that Hillary Rodham Clinton's brother, I think it's Tony Rodham, or maybe Hugh, I forget which of the two of them, got a contract as a director of some startup company to mine, much of the remaining gold of Haiti over on concessionary terms. I mean, how does that make any sense? I mean, you're supposed to go down and help these people, instead you're stealing their gold. And it's shameless.
What's a million? Is that a trillion?
A million is indeed a trillion.
So ours is 1.7 trillion.
Yeah,
that seems high.
So
I didn't know there's that much money in Canada.
Yeah. So it'd be like getting a trillion. It would be like getting almost a trillion, and then not seeing a difference. Yeah.
No. If you're making 1.7 trillion, personal income be like getting 2.8.
Oh right, yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, wow.
So 2.8 trillion. That's like $150,000 for every Canadian.
Yeah,
you might
see a difference.
I mean, maybe you wouldn't. Maybe you wouldn't, right? But no, I mean, you ought to get a hockey rink or two for that. I mean, you ought to get something.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a pattern. When you look through the disclosures, I mean, the standard pattern. And I think the Clintons have never really worked in the private sector. They sort of did. I mean, Hillary sort of did as a lawyer, in various guises, and Bill sort of did maybe as a law professor. But, they've never actually had to go out and work in a place that has real competition, that provides a service or goods or both, has to try, ideally, produce growing revenues, has to pay its people, has to, retain top talent, has to manage difficulties, has to, fend off raids and this. They've never had to do that. And so I don't think it's reasonable to believe that, you would leave the White House, as they did, many millions of dollars in debt for all the various scandals, which they would blame on Republicans, and which I would say, well, they probably brought some of them with them to the White House from Arkansas, which is not, when they were there, a Republican state. And, it was a state they controlled. How then do you leave the White House with nothing, with a negative net worth, as Hillary said herself, we were dead broke, and find yourself, whatever it is now, 16 years later, 15 years later, worth at least $100 million or so.
Well, how do they
even
account?
50.
How can they even account for this? Because, even on the media, when they talk about Hillary's taxes and how much they've made as a couple over the last few years, like 25 million or whatever, and it's obvious that that's not all from these exorbitant speaking fees, right? I mean, some of it must be coming from this as well. And you mentioned at the beginning that charities can't be set up for personal gain. Right. So you've traced some of the money, right, coming in, which some, let's say, countries or organizations show a donation, but the incoming amount is not shown to match, and to the Clinton Foundation, right? So is it safe to say then that this is getting pocketed, and that's where the revenue is coming from? Like, how can there be such an obvious disparity? It's just amazing to me.
Well, it's a great point, and that's where they're trapped. So unlike Peter Schweitzer's pay for play, and unlike, the general, when you're trying to find is an American or a Louisiana or a New Yorkan or, Ontarian politician stealing money, In a charity, you have to account for every penny.
Yeah.
And where there are these discrepancies. So it's an interesting thing. The Clintons, I don't think, ever really retained the type of talent that was then allowed to do the type of work you really need to do, going back to the first day, October 23rd, 1997, to look at the full suite of filings, as I have done. Not everyone in every country, but the important ones around the world and in this country. And when you do that, what you learn is that in addition to the federal forms, which is what they try to distract your attention towards, there are state forms, there are foreign forms. And as an example, here in New York, there's a story that's making the rounds today and yesterday about how, it looks like the Clinton Foundation, which is very much based here, as well as in Arkansas, has not filled its New York State forms right. And on those forms, you can't just aggregate all your government grants. You can't just put a line down, government grants. You have to say every single one. List them out. If Alberta gave the Clinton Foundation 7 different grants, one for energy, one for climate change, one for this, one for that, each one. What was the address of the donor? What was the donor? Prove that it was, in fact, the government. You got to do all that for New York. You don't have to do that for the feds, but you got to do it for New York. And for the feds, that is to say the IRS here, you got to list out, starting the very beginning, like they didn't fill out their form for 1997. It was a partial year. You're supposed to do that, and they didn't do it. So we don't really know what happened in 97. It was a short period. It was two months and a week. But they didn't fill that out. Then in 98 and 98 forward to 2007, they don't fill out the aggregated total for government grants. So that's what they didn't do. But on the other hand, your government, and I've been in touch with your government, and the Norwegian government, I'm in touch with them, and the Australians I'm getting in touch with, and other governments do have these breakdowns. And big donors like the Gates Foundation, they do fill their forms out, and they do tell you year by year how much money they sent to the Clinton Foundation. And when you total up those numbers, big donors, and compare them to the disclosures that the Clinton Foundation has made year by year, that's massive discrepancy. And there shouldn't be a single discrepancy. The basic thesis and I'm not an accountant, but I have some experience looking at accounts, and the basic theory that accountants have is that if you cannot keep track of your revenues, which ordinarily are the most important part of your operation, no other part of your operation is likely to be correct, because revenues are kind of important. If you don't get that right, it's unlikely that you're going to get your cost right. So there's and I've written about it, and it's an American memo, but I believe there are similar memos around the world. Accountants actually get together and write such things as the following title: Considerations of Fraud in Financial Statement Reporting. It's an actual title. It's not a 56-page memo, I think, that tells you what you should look for. And mistakes on revenue are, a big warning sign. So, getting back to where do you see the Clintons enriching themselves? I mean, Hillary, either last night or this morning, made the comment that she and Bill have never taken a salary from the Clinton Foundation. Well, that's because they didn't need to. What they were doing is taking compensation from donors. So an important donor is something called Laureate, which is a Laureate Education, which is an entity that's trying to go public again. That's the largest network, global network of for-profit universities. Now, I'm somebody who was raised by people and grew up around people who take education seriously. And my starting place in thinking about any investment is to ask, does the industry make sense? Why does it make sense to believe that you can set up a university system competing globally against the great government-supported schools and private institutions in Canada and the U.S. and England and elsewhere? Why does it make sense to believe that, you can charge tuition and scalp a profit, and a rate of return for your investors? So you have to get something to distribute to your investors that, Harvard doesn't have to do, and Yale doesn't have to do, McGill doesn't have to do, and other great schools around the world don't necessarily have to do. And why does it make sense you're going to attract the best teachers, the best students? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's why in this country, and I'm not political, but I have been a fierce critic of President Obama's approach against industry and against capitalism. But here's an area where he and I agree. I mean, the Obama administration has been shutting down for-profit universities, and I think for good reason, because they prey upon the most vulnerable people among us. Immigrants whose parents may not know that much about it. Most of these, if you're poor in America and you're smart, you're going to get into a good school, and you won't have to pay for tuition. So why would you go into debt? Down here, when you go into debt for a student loan, they may have changed the rules, but until recently, you couldn't discharge a student loan in bankruptcy. So, to induce vulnerable students who may not know better and their parents to go on the hook for expensive student loans at an expensive university that may or may not ever teach you anything and may or may not ever land you a job in this environment where there's so much economic and geopolitical uncertainty, I think is outrageous. And then you turn around and you say, all right, well, what we're going to do here is Bill Clinton in a 5-year contract in 2010, I think signed around April 2010, while Hillary's still Secretary of State, pay him an average of $3.3 million for part-time work. That's a lot of money
per year.
$3.3 million per year, U.S. dollars, for part-time work, not full-time, not like half a year, minimal work. And I think, I'm somebody, I was talking earlier on a radio station, I'm somebody who liked Ronald Reagan, liked what he had to do, but was really disappointed when he took whatever that money was from the Japanese in 1989 for speeches. I don't think a president of the United States should do that. I don't think you should be if we're not paying our presidents enough, let's pay them some more money.
Right.
Maybe we give them a higher pension, but you shouldn't be out there, next thing you know, what's President Obama going to do next? He's going to appear in a Cialis commercial? Right? I mean, it's ridiculous. He's going to hawk the progressive life insurance. I mean, we shouldn't have politicians at the highest levels of our country. I can't speak about what other countries might do. President of the United States, as for the moment anyway, the leader of the free world, you shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff, and you shouldn't be agreeing, even if the money is really robust. And that money, to put that money in perspective, if you look through the laureate filing I mentioned, nobody at Laureate for full-time work makes that kind of compensation. So what was Bill doing? And why would you pay him so much? Well, the answer to the question becomes clear. They try to take Laureate's a leverage buyout. I used to do leverage buyouts, and I got nothing against them. They're done right. But the crew who invested the risk capital in Laureate are a bunch of billionaires and investors in the funds they manage. They may well be, I would bet, frankly, that the Canadian pension funds are investors in Laureate indirectly, as a bet. This is a guess. And so these are people who are expecting to make money somehow off Laureate. Well, in order to make money on an investment of that type, you have to exit it. So they tried to do that. They closed this deal August of 2007, right before the world blew up, right as the world was starting to blow up. And then 5 years later, which is generally longer than most of these investments are held, you try to get out 2.5, 3.5 years to make your return, they announced they were going to try to go public, and they couldn't do it. The markets were unsettled, and they couldn't get the job done. So they went ahead, and somehow arms were twisted. Full story hasn't come out. And the International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank, put in $100 million directly, U.S., arranged for a fund managed by the IFC to put in 50, and dragged along the Korean Sovereign Wealth Fund for another 50. So $200 million went into Laureate after an IPO couldn't get completed to sort of rescue the finances of Laureate, I would argue. And when you look at this recent filing, that's just about when Laureate blew up financially. Ever since then, its debts have soared to over $4 billion. Its equity at Laureate is under $500 million, according to the latest set of numbers I looked at. It has an ominous statement in its financial statement saying, we are not in control of our financial statements in the risk factor section around page 52 or so of the thing, and that we won't be able to fix it till 2017. Now, I would never put a penny in such an investment. The guys who put money in the beginning, pretty smart people, Goldman Sachs, Stevie Cohen, George Soros, Citibank Private Equity, a bunch of others, very smart people. Things trouble. All right, so you hire Bill Clinton while Hillary's Secretary of State, and they juice the IFC and put some rescue capital in.
Wow.
That looks like a quid pro quo to me. And the people who invested in Laureate, it's not just paying Bill 17, whatever the number was, 5, 6, from Laureate. In addition, the many capital suppliers, the banks, the investment firms, they all hired Bill. Some hired Hillary eventually, and paid these absurd speeches. I mean, as Bernie Sanders was saying when he was, campaigning and making sense, that ought to be some speech. I mean, $200,000, for maybe a 20-minute speech. I mean, that better tell you how to fly to the moon for 16 cents. I mean, that's a lot of money.
I think some were even just phoned in.
So let me wrap my head around this.
How does a company that's only got $500 million in equity, which I guess would be in campuses and infrastructure mainly, how did they manage to rack up $4 billion in debt? Who?
Because it's a Ponzi scheme, I think. See, what it is the basic business premise behind Laureate is you have a bunch of people, and I'm sort of trying to be a bit jocular about a rough topic. You have a bunch of people who valued education so much that, according to the public record, they turned down the chance to go to top schools in the U.S., never went to university, and found themselves eventually in control of this thing, and lit on the idea that they would buy derelict campuses, campuses that weren't making it around the world, and slap together through serial acquisitions financed by debt and financed by seller paper this gigantic network that they would argue was a success. Now, in our country, and I think in your country with, what was that one, Ortel? And, we had Global Crossing, we had Tyco. Serial acquisitions financed by debt are very dangerous because, it's really I used to run a large, when I was younger, merger and acquisition department for a firm that doesn't exist anymore called Dillon Reed. And I will tell you as a professional that, to get one acquisition right is tough. You get 100 right, and that's lunacy. You're not going to get them all right because it's just very tough. And people don't sell things because they hate them. Or because they love them. They sell them because they want out. They look at it and they say, I guess I'd be better off taking cash now. So anytime you're buying something, you ought to understand the reason people are selling it. And they slap together all these deals around the world without controls, evidently, by their own admission. And they have all these university campuses, and they have, the intellectual property in theory. We don't know if it's fairly valued to operate online versions of these universities everywhere. And, it's a big management challenge. I mean, you look at their prospectus, they got some rather funny sounding places all over the place. I mean, the Jordanian School Culinary Institute. I mean, the Saudi Arabian School of Beauty, or something like that. There's some very funny sounding schools all over the place, not to disparage either country, their cooking or their beauty. But I mean, you just look at it and it just doesn't pass a basic smell test. And then another thing I learned the hard way in this type of stuff is if you're going to slap together serial acquisitions altogether, you better have one person in control. You do not want to have a situation where there's nobody in control, which is basically what is the situation with this thing. Nobody's in control of it. And, so there's all sorts of other defects we could get into. But the bottom line is, here's a case where Bill was paid a lot of money for part-time work. And again, I got no problem. You have, who's that woman up there? I don't know what's her name. Celine Dion. How much money did she make for having a beautiful voice? Well, I got no problem. Pay her $1 billion. If she sells records, great, no problem. But if she's selling records, people are buying her records or whatever now, the download. But with Bill, $17.6 million for whatever he may have done doesn't make sense. And then in addition, the banks, the investors outside of the investment itself, turning and writing, Goldman Sachs $225,000 for this speech and that speech and another speech. That's just not right. I mean, the average income in our country for the top 20%, the top people, and even higher, like the top 5% or the average income per worker in the top end is less than $200,000 per worker for a full year. So how do you pay somebody $225,000 for 20 minutes, or maybe it's 40 minutes, Bill speaking forever. when it's not like it's a different speech. It's not like he's saying, well, here's my January 16th speech and I'll do something radically different. And it's got to be more or less the same. And that's just wrong.
I'm interested in the unaccounted, funds, right? Like it seems like a big money laundering scheme. Like how would you ever keep track of it? So if let me wrap my head around it. So if a country or an organization donated, let's say 10 million to the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton Foundation showed a receipt of like not the full 10, like 5 million, then that other 5 can go through other organizations or to Bill himself. Like what do you think happens with that?
Well, you see, this is the stand. What I've had to think about this for 2 years almost. So
because it's hard to prove, I guess.
Well, no. Here's the real thing. You raised a good question. That's the second big category of potential fraud. The biggest one is a slightly more diabolical one. So, in the case of the tsunami, as an example, the Asian tsunami back in 2005.
Yeah.
It is estimated that as much as 10 to 12 billion dollars flowed in all at once, almost as fast as the tsunami hit. Money started pouring in. Yeah. Red Cross, this and there, Clinton Foundation, etc. So the first trick in this disaster relief fraud is how much of the money that is sent towards the foundation actually hits the foundation. That's where the first sliver disappears, particularly if it's coming in off the internet, because there are no controls in it.
Right.
So you imagine a simple case where $1 billion is sent towards a charity, and the corrupt operator says, all right, you know what? We raised $100 million.
Yeah.
And the other one says, wait a minute, we raised $1 billion. No, we raised $100 million. What do you mean? I mean that you're going to get $450 million tax-free, and I'm going to get $450 million tax-free, and people are going to think we're a hero for raising $100 million. That's I'm not saying that's what the Clintons did, but that's the potential in a charity where there are no controls. You won't know how much money actually went there, and then you start with the declared amount. So if you then want to get to the declared amounts, which may or may not be the received amounts, the biggest donor to the Clinton Foundation, unless you read my stuff carefully, I'm going to guess you don't know who it is.
I did read. Well, I read most of your stuff, but I probably couldn't get it right.
George Soros. No, it's the guy that's 100 million, isn't it?
No. So the total amount of declared donations to the Clinton Foundation.
What is it then?
It's the one that the UK is part of.
Yes. I'll give you partial credit.
I'll take it.
All right. So basically, the declared donations to the Clinton Foundation, order of magnitude, are $2 billion. Okay, just the Clinton Foundation. And the largest donor is an entity that is based in Switzerland. It is supported by a consortium of countries, UK being an important one, France being by far and away the biggest one, called Unitaid, UNITA. And Unitaid has given $650 million to the Clinton Foundation. $650 million. And they've had actually reasonable accounts online that lay this all out. If you just Google Unitaid, one word, Unitaid, you'll get to their financial reports, their annual reports. They go on and on and on. They have board minutes and all kinds of information. And they lay out for you how much money was sent by Unitaid to an entity called the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. And Unitaid came together in September of 2006 as a consortium, principally composed of governments, as I mentioned, France, the UK, and Canada, I don't think is a member, but Korea and Spain and Norway and a bunch of small countries. I'm sure I'm leaving people out, but I don't mean to offend any of them. But that's who sends the money in. Now, some of that money comes off, bits and slivers of airline tickets and tolls and stuff like that. Some of it from the UK comes direct from the government. It's sent to a pot in Switzerland. And that pot is supposed to mostly go like 85% or so to the poorest of the poor in the world. Now, wouldn't you know that in the very beginning, in 2006, 7, and 8, over a majority of the money, according to the books and records of Unitaid, the Unitaid sent out of its coffers went to the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative to fight AIDS, with only one or two serious problems. The first is the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. did not exist legally. It had been liquidated on December 31st, 2005, in a transaction the Clintons tried to hide, or their cronies tried to hide, but we found all the paperwork. The second problem is that it was based, or the guts of this thing were based in Massachusetts and run by a guy principally called Ira Magaziner. And he's a pretty sloppy guy. So the Commonwealth in Massachusetts revoked the license of the Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative to operate in Massachusetts, even as money was sent by this consortium to this legal entity that didn't exist. And we're not talking small money. You know, the approximate amount of money that went into the Clinton Foundation in 6, 7, and 8 from this Unitate, round numbers, $300 million. The amount declared in their books, round numbers, $200 million. $100 million disappeared or was diverted in this time frame. What was going on in 2006, 7, and 8? Somebody was trying to get reelected as a senator, and somebody then tried to get elected as a president. That somebody needed money. So, there's never been, my experience dealing with governments asking for money and big people asking for money, they tend to be reasonably careful with their money. Who was doing the diligence on this Unitate? How come Unitate, based in Switzerland in that early period, decided to use an auditor who was the state auditor of the government of India, which has nothing much to do with Unitate, and that state auditor was paid tiny money? Could it be that this Unitate just really didn't want anybody to know that it's a bigger version of the Clinton fraud? That, they were happy that only $100 million got diverted in this transaction because they were stealing $400 million.
Yeah.
And so I come at this from the standpoint of saying, listen, if you're going to have rules for a charity and rules for a business, they probably should be enforced. And, it's one thing, the people, and I do know some people like this who are very, not just big with the money, but they're thoughtful with how they help. When you help somebody in a perfect world, no one knows who helped. The person who needs help doesn't really necessarily want to hear a commercial every day. I helped so-and-so who's flat on his butt. Without me, that person would never, that's not truly helping. So great charities don't do that. They help the silent hands, and they truly help. They figure it out. And, this is just, and great charities, are thoughtful in the way they spend money. Why should Chelsea Clinton fly around in a private jet? Last I checked, she never did much, for taxpayers. I don't see the justification in a charity for having somebody fly in a private jet just because they're the daughter of an ex-president. I don't see the justification for the level of travel expenses that are seen in this thing. And in my experience, when they've done a good job on something, they like to lay it out in metrics. The money came in. If the deadline is X, we're going to meet that deadline. Our records will be done by that deadline. There's no mystery. You make
really good point.
You make things. The virtue. My own dad. You're sitting there, a little kid, trying to explain, as I did in grade school, what does your father do? And this person said, well, my father's a lawyer, and mine's a fireman, mine's a policeman. What does your father do, Dad? Well, he's a physicist. And I'm like, kids say, oh, that's great. What's that? I'm like, I don't know. But when you're in second grade or third grade. But my own dad has this ability to take, a complex topic, whether it's super advanced math or physics or science, and explain it simply. That you should be able to do. That Bill Clinton should be able to do, and Hillary, who wants to be president, should be able to do. But their books and records are a casebook study in fraud.
So is this investigation led you towards NGOs, and how do NGOs play a part in this, or are they the same type of thing as a charity organization? And then because it just seems like to me like one big money laundering scheme, just transferring money back and forth, and then all the people running it get to walk away with the bundles.
Yeah, well, I'm hopeful. What I'm hoping is, that I saw this. I reached this conclusion a year ago. I wrote several articles, and then I realized that it would be tough to move public opinion early on because a lot of people would have assumed that Hillary was automatically going to be president. They wouldn't want to listen to this. So I spent my time, making sure that I was right and checking, actually first testing to see whether I was wrong, and asking a lot of experts. Unfortunately, I know a lot of experts. What am I missing? This is what I see, and they say you're not missing anything. What you're missing is anyone ever going to care about it? And I think, when you look, I don't know Canadian statistics, but I know American statistics. The bulk, the people who give the most money relative to their income, and it's unfair to talk about their wealth because the bottom 80% of this country has no financial wealth. But when you look at income, the people who give disproportionately as a percentage of their income to charity are the bottom 80%, not the rich. And, in our country, people reach into their pockets, if it's just $20 that they should have saved or, spent on food or whatever, and they hear about some sad case, they'll ship it in, by PayPal or elsewhere on the phone.
Text it.
Not caring about the tax deduction, but hoping that money and assuming that money will actually help the person. And really, I started on this because I have a little bit more experience with numbers than many, and I had the time. And I have the interest in the sort of three related interests: managing money, finding good charities, and talking about the unique history of North America, England, which really is quite a unique history. This was an area that I thought would be, interesting, and get this done, expose this, maybe write a book about it, maybe get involved, explaining, the better way to run an international charity. This seemed like a good thing to do. Use this as a test case. Bill Clinton, I think, has been making an error, and he said, I think it was yesterday or today, he said that he kind of regards himself as Robin Hood. Now, evidently, he had not read my memo, and maybe he will never read it, but that was a risky thing. And then today, he followed that brilliant remark up by saying, he's tickled pink that Donald Trump is referring to his foundation as a criminal enterprise. He thinks that's funny. Well, I don't think he's going to end up thinking it's very funny.
Is that honestly what you think? Do you think, because me and Graham were kind of talking about it earlier, and we just kind of think it's just like, like I've watched I don't know how far you've gone down the rabbit hole on the Clintons, but I've watched quite a few things, and all the way back from the MENA connection and Arkansas and what was going on there. And it just seems like they're always a step ahead or a dirty trick ahead or whatever they do, but everything just seems to sort of bounce off them. Do you think that we're actually going to see some things stick here? And if so, do you think it's going to affect the Clintons directly, or do they have fall guys in place?
Well, I think this is something that, if I were in a position where I had, where I was more vulnerable, like I was dependent on government contracts, let's say, or a government lease or this and that, I probably wouldn't be doing this, right? Because, if I'm wrong and they win, you'll probably be able to refer to me as inmate 167354, and I'll be breaking, I don't know, granite up in South Dakota for the rest of my life.
Or you could be 6 feet under. You got to worry about that too sometimes.
Well, yeah, but, in this case, the flip side of it is, and what I figured out, if this had just been a case where you had to find federal crimes, I don't know how familiar you are with our Constitution, but under our Constitution, the President of the United States can only pardon federal crimes. He can't pardon state crimes, and he can't pardon foreign crimes. So when I learned that this foundation is involved in massive, in my view, state crimes, not in one state, but in most states, and not in one foreign country, but in, say, 50 to 75, when I saw that, I said to myself, maybe there's a compromise at the end, and Bill and Hillary just shut the foundation down, and they've already turned the building in Little Rock over to our Records Authority, the National Archives and Records Administration. So nothing really, if you think about the original purpose of the foundation, that will continue for the next 90 plus years. Doesn't matter what happens here. That's going to go. The original purpose will be fulfilled. The people in Little Rock have their complex. We can go visit and see, what records will be over there, how people interpret this thing. None of that stuff's going to change. So what will change, if I'm right, is, and I'll call in this podcast, the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas needs to appoint a conservator to protect the valuable tax-exempt franchise of this thing immediately, forthwith, right now. It has to get the books and records, get access to all the bank accounts, and find out from the inside what's really going on. And then other attorneys general need to say, until this is stabilized, no more fundraising in these jurisdictions. The government of Canada should say the same thing. Until we really understand, until there's a compliant audit, until there's independent trustees, you may not raise money in my country. And then if they're operating in your country, you got to appoint a conservator in your country. You got to go through that process. Then we find out from the inside what's really going on. And then if they're, the way this will dry up for the Clintons is rich people will look at this and say, this is a bridge too far. I mean, it's not like we have Barack Obama in 2008, who was at that time in this campaign period a very attractive candidate. I mean, he could give a great speech, with some blowhardery or whatever the right word is. And so, we are the change we've been waiting for and all that stuff. But in the main, he was a great candidate. The campaign, everything worked well. He looked promising. That's not what we have here. And I'm speaking just clinically. We're not talking about one of my favorite comedic shows is Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister, the thing up in England. And one of my favorite comedic shows is the Prime Minister's answer session in Parliament, which I don't know if you guys have ever watched that, but I mean, the English Prime, I don't know what happens in Canada if a similar thing happens, but in England, the Prime Minister of England has to go to these unruly people in the House of, in Parliament and just sit there with, no notes and answer, really aggressive questions. I mean, they're not like, what do you intend to do for Labor Day? I mean, they're like really tough questions, and they're not pitched to the Prime Minister respectfully either. I like that. And I think the Prime Minister, the President of a country, should have to do that. This is a person who refuses to give a press conference, a real press conference for 9 months. It's not like, we're talking about somebody here as a superstar candidate. It doesn't even seem to be that, into it. And so, I look at this and I say, I fully appreciated the political consequences of this. But I felt that the story about, the good governance of charity. Remember, in our country, I think one estimate is that the size of the not-for-profit sector is approximately 1/7 of our economy.
Wow.
I'm saying 9th, 1/7 is gigantic. I think our nonprofit sector might be as big as your economy. And so there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people in our economy who do wonderful things in the not-for-profit world. They know these rules. They have not checked the rules. They have not checked the Clinton Foundation fund. So I want to make sure they do. And let them tell me I'm wrong, that I've missed something, because I know I haven't, but they can try to tell me that.
Yeah, but it's so much bigger than the Clintons as well. And this, because this is setting a precedence, right? If they get away with this and it continues to go on, I mean, who knows where it's going to go, right? I mean, as soon as people get in the state or whatever, they're going to be starting up these things. They're going to be, laundering money all over the place. It's disgusting.
Exactly. And, and that really is, you get to, I'm not a stick in the mud kind of person, but on questions of, legality, you shouldn't be just saying, what does the statute say and what's the case law? You should ask yourself, what's the right thing to do here? I mean, we're not talking about trying to earn, the last buck here, Canadian or otherwise, from an enterprise here. We're talking about trying to do good work. You should have people around that. We're really asking, Bill said a number of months ago, I think he said, we do more good than harm. Well, that's not what a charity's supposed to do. It's not like, we're not supposed to be doing. Yeah. And we can spend. I mean, the most outrageous thing about this charity is, for me, the fact that it strayed from its purpose and that it's involved. We can leave climate change alone if you want. Well, we can talk about it, but this whole HIV/AIDS thing, Hillary and others are going and saying, these people have helped 11 million people stricken with HIV. There's no evidence of that. There's no concrete evidence of that. When you look at the concrete evidence, if you, God forbid, are afflicted with HIV, in order to remain alive, what you need is the medicine, which is roughly 15 to 25% of the annual cost of treatment is the medicine. And then you need a doctor. You need technicians. You need people to look and make sure everyone's body's slightly different. Everyone's medical history is slightly different. And this medicine that you take to extend your life once you have HIV is toxic stuff. I mean, it's dangerous stuff. It has side effects. And you got to make sure that, when you hook somebody up into a treatment for HIV, that person has access to care for the rest of their life. You can't put them in a position, it's not like a teaser rate, where you go on for 1 year and then guess what? You got to fend for yourself for the rest of your life. When you do the simple math in their books, the stuff that they control, there is only, for the period 2006 to 2009, which is the only place I can find any breakdown of money spent on pharmaceuticals by the foundation itself, it's around $215 million. The annual cost of care, now there are different types of these HIV patients. Some are children, some are adults who, can use what are called first-line treatments, which is like sort of the first pass. If that works, you're fine. Then a smaller percentage are not treated well by the first-line medicines. They have to go to more expensive second-line. So it's unfair, really, to use a blended cost. You should know how much is children and how much is first-line and how much is second-line and where these are around the world. But, of course, it's so important that the Clinton Foundation refuses to disclose any of this information. So you're left with guessing. So to use the math and make it really, really simple, let's assume that it costs $215 per year. That means that the total amount of money spent on drugs controlled by the foundation in their own books, never audited, of course, is enough to treat 1 million patients for 1 year. How could you possibly be helping 11 million people? Now, maybe you're around a process over which you had no direct responsibility that maybe help people, but you can't say that because you're next door to a hospital or that you helped the negotiating team by bringing it a sandwich that you brought the price of HIV/AIDS drugs down. And when did the process of bringing these drug prices down start? It didn't start in 2002. It started well before then. So, it's really sloppy stuff. It's actually shamefully sloppy, and there's going to be a report coming out shortly in the next 2 weeks, maybe even as soon as 10 days. It takes people through the history and takes them through what's really going on here. That what's really going on is that the Clintons had something to do, that is to say, Bill had something to do, along with Ira Magaziner, in getting associated with the process of trying to help people afflicted by HIV. But it's not fair to say that they led the process. It's not fair to say that they alone brought the price of HIV/AIDS medicine down. It's not fair to say that they made sure these HIV/AIDS medicines were distributed and that they only distributed good medicine and didn't let maybe adulterated drugs into the system. It's not fair to say that they kept track of this in all these different countries. It's not fair to say that they made sure that nobody profited from this, that for example, Indian generic drug makers that were thirsting to get into this flow of grant money from your government and our government and other governments, that they didn't make a whole bunch of owners of these Indian generic drug medicine companies really rich. So there's quite a story here, and it's a story for people who are smarter than I am and who are better acquainted with HIV and health and medical things, but it's not as advertised. And shame on Anderson Cooper, and shame on CNN, and shame on the people who allow this myth, where there could be hard evidence, there is hard evidence, this myth to be propagated that, this HIV/AIDS thing, which was never authorized by the IRS, it's not a valid charity, it never was a valid charity. They put together a false and fairly misleading application to try to cover it up September 29, 2009, for President Obama, because it was such a mess. And the IRS, under at the time in that department, Lois Lerner, a controversial figure, waltz this defective application through, which never should have been approved. So it's quite a case study when you get into the details. And I welcome people to challenge me on it. I'd be very happy to debate people on it. But when you engage on the facts, as I suggest in my latest memo, you will be horrified by what you find.
It's disgusting how the media just lets Hillary say whatever she wants. I feel like she thinks she's untouchable. Like nobody's going to question it. Yeah,
I know.
It's brutal.
And I think again I think competition in the main makes people better. And I think if you're gonna, it's not like people somebody woke up one morning and said, Hillary, you must run for president. And she said, no, I don't want to do that. Well, you got to do this. I mean, she's been thirsting to be president of the United States for a long time. So she can't, there's no pity party that's fair here. She's decided to do this. She's not making a real run for it. It's not fair to go up and, have scripted Potemkin-style village meetings where only your supporters are there. I mean, I've been saying for months publicly, fortunately I have a platform to do it on radio and television elsewhere, that what our country needs and what other countries need is in our country we had the Lincoln-Douglas debates, and I forget it was 1858 or 1860, but we had those debates, where opposing politicians, you read the transcripts of these debates, it wasn't, what's your favorite color? Oh, you like green and I like red. I mean, it was really tough questions and really spirited back and forth in front of an audience that knew the issues. That's what we deserve. Have we not evolved since 1858, 1860? I mean, are we that coddled that we can't, as a population, a voting population, understand the issues and think about them and then place a vote for somebody, on the balance of issues that are important to the voter? I mean, do we really have to be fed a bunch of propaganda?
No, it's pretty brutal.
If so, why have elections, on the subject of global warming? And imagine how much carbon dioxide we'd save if none of these people had to travel to vote and none of the politicians had to fly. And, imagine how much extra time we had if nobody listened to the debates, and we just did it by lottery. Somebody wakes up and you're president of the United States. Figure it out.
Or whoever can raise the most money wins.
I think no, that wouldn't be. It would almost be better if it was just a lottery. It'd be amusing to see if you took, by pure chance, somebody. How much worse would
and then
somebody
they get rich?
Yeah, well, forget this getting rich thing seems to be really high on your mind. But we can park that for a second. Have you seen the movie? Have you seen the movie Being There?
No.
Oh man, you guys should rent the movie Being There. I forget what year it was put together. It's about a comedian called Peter Sellers who's passed away, a very funny guy. And the plot line is that he's a gardener in a townhouse in Washington, D.C. And the owner of the townhouse dies. So he has to leave. And he's worked in the gardener of his name is Chauncey. He doesn't know his last name. So he's Chauncey the gardener. So he walks out the front door of this place, and he walks up to somebody in the street, and he's hungry, and he says, fetch me my lunch. And that doesn't go over very well. So the person takes her handbag and hits him with a handbag, and he gets propelled into traffic, and the Secretary of State's limousine is going along the street and nearly hits him. So they figure, well, they better, the guy might sue, so they put him in the limousine, bring him back home. And this long movie is about how Chauncey Gardner is a complete idiot who gets thrust in with the president, and they ask him, so Chauncey, how do you feel about the economy? How do you look at the economy? And he doesn't know even what an economy is. So he says, well, the economy is kind of like a garden. And what you need to do is you should water the garden. So you're in favor of fiscal stimulus, are you? He doesn't know it. Anyway, so he just utters all these platitudes, and the plot line is, next thing you know, at the end of the movie, he'll be the next president of the United States. I mean, that's what we have here in Hillary.
Has this taken you, I can just imagine being in your shoes, and you go through pretty much years of this investigation, and does it not make you want to go more global and put all the pieces together of more of these, NGOs and charities and I mean, there's a whole bunch of threads to pull on here.
Well, that's what I hope to do. I mean, I'm gonna, I think, we'll see how this pans out. But, the first thing is I want to make sure that we stop the fraud, we expose the fraud, and those responsible for the fraud need to get punished one way or another. Once that is done, there's sort of a general interest book, how did some nut decide, in his spare time, why did I do this? And to tell the inside story of what really happened.
Yeah.
So I'll do that, maybe. And then there's the more practical thing, as you rightly point out, of doing a textbook with a law professor. I mean, in touch, actually, with a professor, thinking about where we do it. There isn't a textbook that I know of that says, if you're going to run a U.S. charity internationally, how should that charity be structured, and what can you learn from, what mistakes can you learn from, and how do you decide to do it correctly? And do that really thinking about the important parts of the world where you might do that. And do it first from a U.S. perspective, and as you point out, then you could do one from a Canadian perspective. You could do it from an English perspective. You can, and then you do case studies. I mean, there are a lot of these. I went to Harvard Business School, and I was, I got through the case study method, which actually I went when I was really young. I was only 22 when I started, and 24 when I finished. But the case study method has a lot to recommend itself, and you could teach this by looking, there's 200 countries roughly. There's probably 100 that are in trouble, that need help at minimum. And so there are a lot of stories that need to get told, both good ones and bad ones. How could you make a charity more effective? What pitfalls need you to worry about? And so I could envisage probably doing this from a university setting in league with real professors, because, I'm not a professor and I don't want to really be a professor, though I'd be happy to talk about this. Mm-hmm. You have some sort of an institute or affiliation, and you think about it rigorously.
Create a charity to do it.
Right, yeah.
A charity to create the textbook for the charities.
What is, in your opinion, one of the up-and-up charities?
I'm somebody who does not express hip-shot opinions, so I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I can't, and I don't want to just off the top of my head say this is good and that's good. I do know, though, that smaller charities that do excellent work. And I do also know, there are a lot of people who don't do charitable work within a charity. There are a lot of people, you hear these stories of, servicemen who will be sitting in a diner somewhere, wounded or whatever, and, order a meal, next thing they leave and the meal's paid for. And that kind of stuff happens all day long. A fireman dies, and next thing you know, there's a tuition fund for the kids. And nobody says, I gave the money. That just happened. So those type of acts of charity are to be commended. You don't need an organization necessarily to perform charity. And I disagree with Warren Buffett on a lot of things. I mean, he doesn't particularly care that I disagree with him. But one area where I agree with him, he said that dispensing charity is extremely difficult. And he's right. I mean, there's far more money interested in getting involved giving for charity than there are charities that really can do good work with that money. I mean, there's a social safety net around the world, and there's a social safety net around the world, and governments do a lot that they didn't necessarily do even 60 years ago. So you have all the government work, and you have all the government work. Then you have, as I mentioned, not-for-profits are a big slug of the total economy. So it's not as if charities, are sitting there with a blank slate that, nobody is doing anything. A lot of people are already doing good work. So I would probably, as I think about it, get involved showcasing those that are good, in particularly egregious examples like the Clinton Foundation. Should I find more like this, making an issue of them? And then speaking more generically about, these are, here's some tough issues that charities have to face. How should you think about this? And, I know, having been now a trustee of two different charities, that you get asked to do this kind of stuff, and you typically by friends, people you respect, and you trust them, and they're good people. So you don't necessarily, in the beginning, check it out the way you should. So giving advice to people who serve on charitable boards is something that you'd want to do, maybe in a newsletter or something, or a book, or speeches from time to time. But that's something I'd enjoy doing. I think on one area in charity that I think is quite good, there are a lot of educational charities that do fantastic work. That really do help think through, break down issues that affect the daily lives of people around the world. And the goal of these charities is to, for free often, help you think through, what it takes to be a good parent, what it takes to be a good sibling. How do you get through a divorce? What's the best way to, run money or, administer a charity? What's the best? There's practical things that you can break it down. And there's lots of good work in those areas being done.
So what about the meat of what you've been releasing on your website? So you've got like charlesortel.com, and you were mentioning at the beginning there that Zero Hedge picked up one of your latest, what would you call it? You're sort of releasing some of this stuff in pretty good detail for people to grab it and go through it on their own, right?
So the approach I took, this is something where what I'm trying to do, and I have some people who are helping me. We're trying to influence public opinion. So, I don't want to get up on top of a mountain and, bring down some tablets and say, here's the answer. Although I think I know what the answer is.
Yeah.
I want to engage curious minds and investigative journalists around the world to really look at it. And so, it's taken me a while to get people interested. I mean, I wrote an article last year for Breitbart on March 16th, 2015, with so many red flags, why isn't the IRS auditing the Clinton Foundation? And when I wrote it at first, I don't know how much experience you have looking at, Facebook shares and things like that. It got a fair amount of coverage. For a dense topic like that, I'm not talking about Kim Kardashian or some sexy, movie starlet or something like that. I'm talking about a dry topic. So you don't ordinarily get a lot of interest. But in that case, we got, in the beginning, around 6,000 or 7,000 Facebook shares when it was published, around that week. Mm-hmm. Pretty respectable. And then it grew. It grew to like 20, and then 30, and 40, and now it's around 70. That's a lot. And we're starting to see people really engage on it. So I've had some time now to go to the very famous investigative journalists around the world and make my case. And most of these people are like, perhaps you are or I am, we have plenty of ideas. We need new ideas. I don't want yet another thing to think about. So it takes a while to nudge these people towards actually, doing something. And now I've got a lot of them doing that. And now what I did in this most recent piece is I'm trying to provide the framework at first so that you wrap your mind about how to think about this. And if you go back to my site on April 20th, I produced something called the First Foundation Report. Mm-hmm. And you start there and read forward. There's a lot already there. And what I'm doing now is saying, all right, here are, just for the period October 23rd, 1997 through 2011, here I've laid out and summarized for you the what you will see proven. And I'm holding things back, by the way. This is not everything that I found. This is just the beginning. For 40 separate topics, all of which are defects in the way you should report for a foundation. 40 separate areas, just for the period October 23rd, 1997 through the end of 2011. Here are 40 separate areas where the Clinton foundations are false and materially misleading. And I take you through category by category by category. I give you the clues. And in other reports, I've explained to people, and I've been talking to a lot of people, and they know how to do this now. And I fully expect enterprising journalists will pick this trail up and start pounding story after story, as I then sequentially take you through Exhibit 1, and Exhibit 2, Exhibit 3. Depending on the topic, some exhibits might be 3 to 5 pages, some will end up being 40 pages. It can take a while to go through all this. And I wasn't, frankly, anticipating the reaction that I got today and really today, where I found myself on the phone nonstop, several interviews. So, there's only so many of me and the people helping on this. It's going to take a while to get through all this. to see the way I'll look at it. But meanwhile, other journalists are going to start exposing stories, and the pressure is going to build. And U.S. attorneys are looking at this, and the FBI field officers are looking at this, and foreign governments are looking at this, and people who might sue the Clintons are looking at this, and other trustees. So we're not going to, in this case, have, the kind of flippant political exercise where Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton can, fill up a school gymnasium with paid supporters of the Clintons, and then, give this great speech about everything's fine. No, we're going to have some sharp people look at this. And, it's possible I've made a mistake, and human beings make mistakes. But on this analysis, I haven't. No substantive mistakes.
Yeah.
No material mistakes. Certainly nothing approaching the mistakes that the Clintons have made. And I'm not running for president, and I have no interest in running for president or any political office. So, I have an interest in seeing that charities are properly run. That's my interest.
Well, it's good to see you getting more mainstream coverage because Darren and I were mentioning it's going to get because we've heard you on the new media, like some podcasts and stuff like that, and some pretty big podcasts. I mean, the No Agenda show has been playing your clips, and they have quite a listenership all over the world.
I'd say 1 million or so.
So I think that whole thing is starting to roll down the hill towards the mainstream. So hopefully you get. Yeah, it continues to happen here.
And you got Trump running it down, too, so people will be Googling it.
Well, we'll see. I really want, good people to really think about this, And it's funny what's happening here as well. I went to Yale College undergraduate that has this thing called the Political Union, modeled on the Oxford Political Union. And when I was there, I foolishly thought I might dabble in politics, so I got involved, and I was chairman of the centrist party there, the Conservative Party. And then I got married a number of years afterwards, and at the wedding reception there were like 400 people, and got through the wedding and nice reception, and then I had to shake everybody's hand. And at the end of that, I turned to my now ex-wife and I said, I have one promise I can make to you. I will never run for political office. I mean, I couldn't make it through 400 handshakes, let alone what you have to do to run. So no interest whatsoever in politics. Keen interest in seeing this done correctly. And then, I would like to see the markets correct. I think they're way overvalued. I'd like to see, a consensus built about, how we make the world safer. And with that, I'd like to live the rest of my days, helping people manage money, helping to think about charities, writing, speaking, and, telling tales about history, studying history and telling tales. That's what I want to do. That sounds like fun to me.
Are you getting any negative feedback?
Well, I'm on Twitter, so you'll get Twitter trolls. Actually, it's funny. The very famous guy, Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Billionaire. He somehow noticed what I'm doing. He's a big shill, apparently, for Hillary, and so he was making all kinds of negative comments. And so I wasn't going to take that. So I said, have you read any of this stuff? Do you know anything about charity? So he pointed me to his accountant, and or to an accountant he respects, who'd written a negative comment about an article somebody else had written about my work. And so I spoke to that person. That Cuban pointed me to him. And I offered, and I'll offer on your part, I will debate Mark Cuban on this issue. I'll debate anybody on this issue. Anybody who's studied this. I'd be happy. I'm not going to debate, somebody who doesn't care about the rules and just thinks, the president ought to be able to get away with whatever a president wants to do. That's not, last time I checked, I didn't wake up in anarchy. We have some rules. So, but I'll happily debate any of those people. And of course, Hillary has got a lot to lose if she does not win, beyond just losing, as do the Clintons. So of course, people will be critical. I don't mind constructive criticism. That's fine. But hating comments, I don't listen to that stuff.
I kind of, we kind of touched on it earlier jokingly, but I got to ask you seriously, have you had any fleeting concerns for yourself? Like, I mean, a lot of it's conspiracy, but it does seem to follow the thing that people that fuck with the Clintons tend to have problems.
Right.
Like stay away from
Language.
hot tubs and bench presses and
Small aircraft.
Right. So what we're talking about here, again, I'm not interested in politics. I'm not running for office. I'm interested in charity. And actually, there are what are called whistleblower protections for charities. I cannot stop crazies. But the one thing I did, because I care about this being fixed, is the truth that I see about this charity is in the hands of many, many people around the world.
Yeah.
This will get exposed.
Yeah.
No matter what. And
That was my next question.
So I certainly was not that stupid. But on the other hand, we're talking about a charity here after all. I remember myself when I was younger playing tennis, and I liked it and I was so at it and, pretty competitive at it. And then you get to a point where, you're getting upset with yourself and, whatever. And then you got to remember tennis is a game. Charity is, we're not talking here about fighting a war. We're not talking about death-defying stuff. I mean, we're talking about trying to do good works and only good works, not more good than harm. So, I'm gang tackling them on charity because they screwed up big time. This is unacceptable. This is deplorable conduct, despicable conduct, and I'll happily say that. And I don't care what they have to say about it. I care about the facts. That's why you'll notice this particular issue is concentrating upon Clinton Foundation facts. Let's talk about some facts. Show me an audit. Show the world a true consolidated financial audit for any year. They can't do that.
My gut says if Clinton wins the election, then it all goes away, and if she doesn't, then she goes to jail.
Yeah, or loses everything, or loses a lot financially. The way I, handicap it, and again, I'm not a political expert. I mean, we've got to get from today, past September 11th. Let's hope nothing happens. We got to get through, the big banks are now starting to say this is reminiscent of 2008. Could there be another financial crash? We got to get through, between now and the election, if there's a financial crash and or geopolitical instability, Hillary loses. Forgetting whether or not there are problems with the foundation. She loses. So to think that she's going to win, you have to believe that there's, peace between now and then. You have to believe that the markets will stabilize or rise. And then you also have to believe that Julian Assange is faking it. He has nothing.
Yeah.
You have to believe that no foreign security service has anything. You have to believe that no disgruntled members of the FBI have anything. You also have to believe that Hillary is a strong performer on the campaign trail between now and then. Now, name one strong performer. One. And in Trump, if Hillary were running against Mitt Romney or Jeb Bush, I'd be more nervous. But, Trump is so unpredictable. And you're starting to see the never-Trumpers get on his side. I hang out here in Manhattan in some surprising places, on purpose, where, simple restaurants and stuff, where people see me there regularly and they now start talking to me and stuff. And, poor African-American, Hispanic people, are pro-Trump, some of them, much more than you think.
Yeah.
So, and I would, you probably were not all that, maybe you weren't all that active back in 1980, but,
I wasn't even conceived.
Just trying to be nice. But anyway, back in 1980, I was, I was 24. And I remember not necessarily being that enthused of Mr. Reagan in the beginning. And I remember, because I checked it, that around this time in 1980, Carter, for all the problems of Jimmy Carter in the economy back then, and we had hostages a long time, humiliated in Iran. We were getting humiliated right and left. Jimmy Carter was even with Reagan in September of 1980, from memory. And Reagan opened up a serious can, as Adam Sandler says in his movies, of whoop-ass on Carter. I mean, it was a serious can. And the picture changed a lot in 60 days. And here we have, Hillary, somebody who spent a tremendous amount of money on traditional advertising, not moving the needle. Not moving the needle. And so anyway, looking at all this, I like my chances right now because, again, I'm focused on charity, and if I'm wrong, I'll accept it. If I'm right, they need to accept it.
Yeah. Right on. Well, geez, I urge...
I know who I'm rooting for.
Let's stay out of it, Darren.
No, I mean between him and Hillary. Not between the Donald and Hillary.
Right. So, we urge everybody to check out your website, charlesortel.com, full of information. You've got all those reports there. And
thank you. And I'm on Twitter at Charles Ortel. And I do try to do, like right now, I'm sort of chock-a-block with interviews and things and having to write. But I do try to take the time. People reach out to me, not nasty people I tend to block right away. But people have a question or whatever, and if I have the time, I try to answer it. I try to put thoughtful stuff up there. I actually relish the interchange. People who have leads and send them to me. I communicate with them and get them to email me. I view this as a cooperative process. I'm just part of a team.
Yeah, well, we can tell how freely you put your stuff out on the site, and you can tell you're not in it for the money. So it's visible. Thanks so much for coming on, Charles. Really, really appreciate your time.
All right, anytime. Thanks for having me on. Stay in touch, and all the best to you.
Yeah, it was great, and stay off a small aircraft.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Clear. That was our chat with Charles Ortel. A little more political than usual around here. But I think the timing is good. It's a good time to get into it. The more I go down the Clinton rabbit hole, the more appalled it becomes.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's disgusting.
They're like we're crazy mobsters.
Like even the Clinton cash thing, I watched that, and even if it's not all true, like even if half of it's like half true, it's just brutal.
Even if half of half is true,
it's just disgusting. Like it's, but to think that's kind of open. Like for some reason, it's out there for people to investigate. Like they don't do a very good job at hiding it. Like I don't even think they realize that. They just think they're untouchable. Like nobody's going to do anything to them. Like he was president, she was Secretary of State. Like that's it. Nothing can happen. They're fucking bulletproof. It's disgusting.
Yeah,
and that's just like the tip of the iceberg. Really, what's visible? What's not visible? What's hidden?
What's in the back room?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. It's despicable.
And how long is this, like, with all this attention that he's getting in the new media and all, like, it's going to be really interesting couple months here.
I don't think he's taking my advice to stay off a small aircraft seriously enough.
No.
I was going through the Clinton body count.
You went down the rabbit hole.
Over 90. And they're all like, one guy overdosed on mouthwash and somehow crushed his throat.
Was he on the bench press at the same time if his throat was crushed?
And then there was a suicide in the back of the head.
Lots of suicides?
Yeah, some chick in Arkansas who was pregnant and saying it was his kid suicided herself in the back of the head.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I don't even want to address this because I don't want to give Charles any bad, bad vibes or anything, like throw out any kind of negative stuff, but wow.
It's scary. I commend him. He's doing important work.
Yeah.
And maybe it won't matter because those motherfuckers will be in jail by Christmas. Could you imagine?
He's brave. Come on here, man. He's probably going to get some flack. Oh, look at this guy. I mean, going on talk shows about paranormal and conspiracy shows.
Yeah, well, it's gathering steam. It's gathering steam. Yeah. So I guess we'll see where we are in 60 days.
Yeah.
I don't think she's got a chance in hell anymore.
Really, eh?
I think the Clintons are going down, crash and burning.
Well, wasn't there a bunch more emails too about
Bill's still gonna
Benghazi
end up
coming
to-
up
yeah.
and like the
And then there's
email fiascos going crazy? And the more you hear about that, it's just she's so stupid about how she handled all that.
and Assange still says he's got stuff that'll put her in jail.
All the devices and the different like I was listening to that one where the laptops were mailed places. Like somebody created a Gmail account to like upload all her stuff to put it on a stick. Like you're telling me that her emails are in Gmail and on laptops that didn't arrive at the destination, and it's all the information is safe.
And they just threw out her old.
They just hammer it with a hammer.
They say
And throw it.
her email server was an old Mac Mini.
Oh,
They were done. They just threw it out.
because you can picture her not wanting to comply with like the government stuff. I don't want the government. I want to keep it all together. And why do you think she wants to keep her own email, right? Because she wants to fucking get all this stuff through the Clinton Foundation, right? It's mind blowing. She's totally out of touch.
Yeah.
With reality, completely.
Guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
The plot thickens. So help us keep exploring these sort of topics and stay an ad sponsor, affiliate, and bullshit free, other than Graham's bullshit, and support the show.
Yeah, no, it's true though. Eh? Like we couldn't do this if we had ads and stuff. Imagine if we started getting political and fucking ads.
Squarespace would dump us in a second.
Yeah. You should bleep that out.
Oh yeah, I gotta quit saying fuck. I'll call it fuck space.
Well, you haven't said it a lot.
No, I know, but someone actually emailed me and said, every time you bitch about other people's Squarespace ads, you're actually advertising Squarespace. So anyway, check out Grimerica.ca/support. A bunch of different options there on how you can help us keep plowing forward. Sign up for a monthly, everything from $1 to $30 a month, all of which would be less than the price of a cup of coffee a day. And or a one-time donation, check out Grimerica.ca/swag or donate. Are we just going to keep the shirts for local after these last couple?
No, I was going to do an inventory for you, but there's at least like probably 3 or 4 large and 3 or 4 extra large of the traditional Moai one, and there's a few like don't shoot or take the shots in there as well. So I mean, I'd rather just get rid of those. Like that, we need to kind of cash out. I put money into making those, right? And we don't make a lot on them, so it'd just be nice to cover expenses.
Yeah, I think
sooner than later.
Yeah, so that's Grimerica.ca/support. Maybe if you're planning on donating and just for the sole purpose of a T-shirt, just shoot an email first and make sure we have, because we're not reordering. So if we don't have your size in stock, let us know.
Right, good point.
You shoot us an email if you want a shirt, and let us know, because if not, we'll redirect you over to the new store, which will have whatever size you need.
Yeah.
I actually ordered a couple for the kids.
Nice.
Just says Grimerica, and I didn't find the doobie smoking appropriate for the children, so I just got some babies that just say Grimerica on them.
Yeah, even if it wasn't a doobie, it's just still not even smoking. It's just not appropriate.
Fuck me.
Imagine that. That's probably worse.
Probably get your kids
That's probably worse.
away.
It's a cigarette. That's worse.
Yeah, oh fuck. They'll come and get me. So yeah, check out all that shit. Spam Graham. Sign up for the newsletter, Grimerica.ca/news.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah.
All right, you motherfuckers. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
I'm feeling hot and kind of dirty. And I was wondering, would you like some socks? Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. My third leg's already dancing. To the Bill Clinton strike. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. My third leg's already dancing.
say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie. Not a single time. Never. These allegations are false. And I need to go back to work for the American people. An inside job? How dare you?
Smoke my style, baby. Put it in your Awful Authors. Cause I'm still wondering, would you like some socks? Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. My third leg's already dancing. With the belly can dance. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. Sex on the phone. My third leg's already dancing. To the Bill Clinton strut.
I'm a rambling gram with synchronicities all over the web. And Ervin is skeptical about everyone and don't believe it yet.
You don't say ham, you say spam. You don't say ham, you say spam. Spam.